Okay, let's now turn to another question that is critical to this AI revolution. Will the spread of AI result in the loss of jobs, of trust, and widen the divide between the haves and the have-nots? That's the question I posed to the chief economist of OpenAI, Dr. Arun Ronnie Chatterjee. Listen in. Ronnie, welcome. Just wanted to, in the first instance, ask the big question that's often asked at the moment. What we are seeing around us, is it a bubble or is it the real thing? What we are seeing around in India, is it hype or is there substance to the India story when it comes to AI?
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you for having me. It's great to see all the folks in the audience. This is an impressive event. When you think about the number of people who have come to India to exchange ideas about AI, how India has become the center of this discussion. I go to a lot of these kinds of events, and it gives me a lot of pride as a person of Indian heritage to come back to India and do this event. I think it's for real when it comes to AI. You know, I'm an economist, so I spent a lot of my career studying prior economic recessions and bubbles and trends and new technologies. And I've looked at everything from the printing press to the semiconductor to the internet. AI is real. You're seeing users around the world adopt these tools and get real value out of them. That's different than some of the other technological trends in the past. We've reached 900 million weekly active users, and we have 100 million weekly active users here in India. That's real value. There's 1 million businesses that are our customers, and obviously others using other tools as well. That's real value. And there's billions of dollars of revenue that are being realized around AI. So I think in general, the story around AI globally is real. And in India, I think it's as real as it is anywhere. I mean, we have many users here. It's one of our fastest growing markets. If you look at the applications in India, a lot around coding and data analysis, I see real work and real productivity happening in the Indian context.
We've titled the session, Building India's AI Economy, Talent, Trade, and Trust. I'll come to the 3 T's one by one in a moment, but I just want to step back to ask you this, because the numbers suggest that the United States and China have dominated the first wave of this AI revolution. 80% of the investment spent in infrastructure has been between these two countries, and the rest of the world, including India, is seen to play catch-up. Would that be a fair way to look at where we stand today? Countries like India essentially at the moment are playing catch-up because the foundation models and the investment in innovation and infrastructure, the United States and China are in another league. The arms race has been replaced in a way between these two superpowers as an AI race. So is India playing catch-up?
Yeah, massive investments can be required in India to play in the intelligence age. But I do think we're still in the early innings of this. And I think in India, I see a recognition that you have to invest all around the stack. Like, if you think about what the government is introducing, it's 5 different layers of the AI stack, including infrastructure. So that is going to be required. But I also think India has a lot of advantages. When you think about the over 1 million STEM graduates, engineering graduates every year who come out of Indian universities and institutions, these are people who are going to be more fluent with AI than the average person. They're going to build apps on top of our API. They're going to be able to use AI to get things done. So India has a lot of advantages, and there's a lot of investment potential. So I think there's a lot of work to do, but also a lot of reason for optimism.
One of India's problems has been 58% of our population dependent on agriculture, contributes only 16% of national income. Agriculture productivity is going to be key. Tell me, how is AI, in concrete terms, how is OpenAI going to actually make the Indian farmer more productive? Again, is it hype? Or can you give me a real-life case example to show, look, this is what OpenAI can do for Indian agriculture?
No, I mean, this can be real, and it's not just OpenAI. It's going to be working with a lot of parties in India. But right now, you can put intelligence into a farmer's hand. We're doing that with several initiatives in India. What are the biggest ingredients to the productivity of a piece of land? It could be the fertilizer you use or the methods you use to plant crops. These are all things that having guidance and support really matter. The #1 uses of ChatGPT are for practical guidance and learning. These are the things that can help in agriculture or in the classroom. So it's real, it's happening. It'll be us, it'll be partners in India who know the local context, but I think this is a great potential, and it's one way to increase productivity in the economy. There's lots of other parts of the Indian economy to work with too, but that's one key piece.
As we said, we want to talk about the 3 T's: talent, trade, trust. Let's talk about talent for a moment. We have a large pool of young Indians, engineers, skilled labor, but we also have a large pool of unskilled labor. And presumably one of the challenges is skilling, because the fear from an Indian perspective is, will AI spread lead to job losses? And that's the last thing a country like India needs with its large demographic dividend. How do you see it? Are those fears real, or is this fear mongering? To believe that the more you spread AI, the more it's going to result in low-skilled jobs, particularly losing out.
Yeah, let me take them one by one. I mean, first, when people have anxiety about jobs, whether or not that's born in the data, it is real. You have to take that feeling head on and talk to people about what the numbers are saying. We released a report recently that shows that AI is largely in India complementing workers more than substituting them. And this, by the way, is consistent with a lot of economic data, right? With the introduction of new technologies, you often see that technology is making workers more productive, not replacing them. And it depends on the pace of adoption, of course, with AI. I think in India, I am optimistic that it's going to complement a lot of human workers, especially the ones you're talking about. On the less skilled labor, or the folks who have less access to resources, there's also a lot of applications for upskilling. We released a product recently that helps people get more education and training using AI. You know, you might need help uploading your resume, or writing a cover letter to an employer, or even identifying some of the employers that you might work with. If you think about applying this to people who have fewer skills and less formal education, you could help people get access to opportunities they couldn't have before. AI doesn't just provide information, it also provides some navigation, right, to be able to navigate a job market. So I feel like it has potential on both ends you're talking about, to make workers more productive, but also help people who aren't necessarily part of the labor force or need more education and training a chance to access those things.
I want to look at the second T, which is trade. Last week, the market saw what was termed as the AI trade scare. Software stocks plunging globally on worries surrounding AI advancements. Why did this happen? Do you believe markets will stabilize, or will we again see, even within markets, particularly in software companies, further friction due to AI?
So, as an economist, I never will make predictions about the stock market, but I will tell you what I think is happening is this. AI capabilities, as measured by the benchmarks we use to assess our models, they're going up and to the right. They're getting better and better and faster. As a result, people are looking at all kinds of different markets, insurance, real estate, software as a service, and saying, oh my goodness, AI can do that. I think the market will stabilize in the following sense.
The third T, which is trust.
Yeah.
And particularly for, let's say, a media network, that becomes an extremely important factor. We've already seen the mushrooming of deep fake and what that can do to the information systems. But there are wider fears, national security, fears to privacy. Are those fears legitimate? And should every country, therefore, be looking to build their own sovereign AI systems with their own legal regulatory systems as a kind of guardrail? How do I ensure that AI doesn't become this national security threat? How do I ensure that AI doesn't threaten privacy?
Every new technology is going to bring opportunities like we talked about, but also these real challenges, and they are real. As you think about, for example, child safety, that's one thing that's really important to me personally, but also to the organization. We released this new teen safety blueprint to talk about how we can improve safety for young people using the platform. It's really important in India, where we have the largest population of students using ChatGPT compared to any place in the world. So this is definitely something we have to work with governments on, and we have to have a cooperative relationship to get things done. I will say, when it comes to national security, you see governments taking a stronger role to make sure that their stack is secure and they're cooperating with trusted partners. I hope OpenAI can be part of that as well.
But can I ask you, for example, OpenAI, is the goal at the moment, let's find revenue models, let's maximize revenues, or is it let's put in place these systems, even if revenues slow down, to ensure that we are at the cutting edge of technology without, let's say, interfering the people in privacy, for example?
I'll say two things on this. Safety has always been core to the mission, so that's going to be guiding what we do. We don't see an inherent conflict in many cases between safety and being successful as an organization. If we're trying to provide AI to as many people as we can, we're only going to be able to do that if people trust our products, right, and if they're safe. So in some sense, this trade-off, right, it can be real in some situations, but we don't see it as adversarially as others do. Safety has got to be number one.
The other challenge, Ronnie, is that this computing power is going to need a huge amount of energy. A huge amount of data usage. Do you believe countries like India are equipped, or again well behind, the clock when it comes to that? I want an honest answer. I know you're in India, but the truth of the matter is, again, I come back to the Chinese and the Americans. The more one reads, simply seem to be in another league. Does India have the capabilities, you believe, in the next few years to catch up?
I think India definitely needs a sea change in how they invest in infrastructure and the permitting process by building these different sort of facilities. I have a lot of experience in chips, as you know, and when it comes to building a fab, and I think about the time it takes to build a fab or the skilled workforce required, these are things that have to change if India is going to continue to invest in infrastructure. From a policy perspective, I expect the government to be focusing on that. It seems like the recent plan is in that direction.
So what would be the three things? If you were to advise, if you were chief economist AI for India, move away from OpenAI, come to GOI.
Is anyone offering me this job? Because I might take it.
What were the three things that you would tell them to do?
First, skilled workforce. We need more investment in the manufacturing workforce. India has obviously been fantastic in developing software workforce. The manufacturing hardware piece, there's more work to be done. Second is developing more energy sources locally in India. That's a key issue you talked about. And the third is not just beyond the energy, but connecting to the grid and permitting around interconnection. Those are the three things, at least from my knowledge of India, that I think are really important.
Because one of the things that we did in the recent budget was to give a tax holiday to foreign companies that want to come in and invest through their cloud services in data centers that are established by Indians. Do you believe those partnerships are the way forward?
I think some of this will be partnerships. You can imagine the expertise of the hyperscalers, which are based largely in other places, cooperating with Indian firms that have local context and local knowledge. But I also think you might see indigenous firms in this area too. It's something that we'll have to watch. But I think partnerships can be great in this area.
Because today the leader of the opposition in India has called it data theft. That we need to protect our data. That this will, Rahul Gandhi says that all these companies coming into India, they're stealing your data. Data should be protected. Can a country really protect data? Isn't it transnational now with no boundaries?
These partnerships are happening all over the world. So, I think that we can find ways to partner and bring capital and expertise to India and at the same time safeguard Indian data, for sure.
Okay, one of the things being a TV channel is that the possibility exists that there will be AI anchors.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And that's perhaps the end of people like us.
I prefer you, though. I have to say, I prefer humans.
Thank you very much. Are you sure? Say that loudly enough so that we can survive. But we've got some AI anchors out there, and they've got some questions for you.
Sure.
Take a look.
Oh, excellent.
Thank you, Rajdeep. My question to Dr. Chatterjee. Will AI pose a bigger challenge to developing nations like India, where job creation for millions of youth is challenged, unlike the West, where population is significantly less?
Oh, I think AI presents different challenges in India. I wouldn't say it's easier or harder. In the United States, the conversation is very much focused on white-collar jobs and the impact of AI on those jobs. In India, you have a different industrial mix and a different workforce. In some cases, there's a lot of folks who can benefit from the expansion of intelligence to provide services that you don't have currently. Think about things like education. In the other sense, there's a lot of jobs in the software industry here that you have to watch closely. So I personally am watching these companies in the BPO industry specifically as they try to move up the value chain yet again. They've done it many times. They've been very flexible and scalable. AI presents a new challenge. I expect a lot of those companies are going to utilize AI to move further and further up the value chain. But it's a more competitive environment for one of the biggest sort of employers in the Indian context in software.
What do you see, therefore? I know in the world of AI, it's very difficult to predict the future because every month seems to bring some disruption or the other. But if I were to ask you, even a 5-year horizon, where would we be in 2030? Where would India be? Where would the world be in embracing this AI economy? What's your projection?
Projection, I think, on the capabilities, they're continuing to advance very rapidly. The one thing I learned coming from academia and from government to OpenAI is I underestimated how quickly the capabilities were advancing. I underestimated how quickly the models were improving. I think that's going to continue if we continue to see the scaling laws that guide a lot of the innovation apply, and I'm confident in that. I think that enterprises and individuals are going to find new uses, but the adoption rates are going to vary dramatically by organizations and countries. I expect India to be one of the leaders in this space. I think the commitment to this summit here in India is one direction, but it's going to take work both on the education side, from K to 12, and also in secondary and advanced education, but also inside companies to train employees. The countries and the organizations that can reduce the capability overhang, this this idea that the models are very capable, but people don't even know how to use it for that, that is really the key. India has a lot of data pointing in the direction they're going to be able to do that, given the higher than average proportion of people who are using tools for coding and data analysis. That's the thing India needs to build on. I expect it to be in a good position in 4 or 5 years.
You know, in one of your papers, you warned against outsourcing critical thinking to AI.
Yes.
Which I thought is fascinating. Now, how do you do that? How do we get our education system, which is extremely exam-driven and marks-driven, to actually create a system? Because I see young kids looking at ChatGPT for basic homework, which perhaps only means that critical thinking no longer takes place. So how do you ensure that India's next generation does not outsource critical thinking to AI?
So this is my biggest worry about AI, is that, I have kids myself, 8th grade, 6th grade, 3rd grade, and I want them to learn the fundamentals. I want them to learn how to add and subtract before I give them the calculator. I want them to learn how to write an essay before they use AI to do it. Once they learn those foundations, though, AI can be a tremendous force multiplier. I think about my flight across the country that I take every other week. I talk to ChatGPT the whole way about economics, and I learned things I never could have learned from any book. That kind of generative thinking, that back and forth, is what I want my kids to have. But I don't want them to outsource the critical thinking and the fundamentals. So it comes back to 2 things: how we design our education system, right? If I'm a professor by background, of course, how do we design our assessments? If the assessments are all take-home exams, then students are going to be encouraged to use AI. We have to put more presentation skills, oral presentations, being able to quiz people on the spot rather than just relying on written assessments. The second thing we need to do is make sure that we use the tools in the right place, at the right standard or the right grade at the right time. It can't be for every exercise. And this is going to be up to local school districts, depending on where you are, or sometimes national standards, depending on the education system. I think parents also have to play a really strong role. I know my kids are probably watching and they'll say that I could do better at that. But I will say that parents and teachers need to take a lot of interest in this. Otherwise, we will have the problem you're talking about. And it's a big worry for me as an educator. Okay, let me end by saying, as someone of Indian origin who comes back here, you look at India, you look at this energy that's, I believe that India's aspirational energies are even greater than the United States in its pomp in the last century. There's that that's the big positive. From your perspective, as someone returning home in a way, if I may say so, what's the biggest positive you see about the India story, and what's the one thing that you see that troubles you? The youth. I mean, the India is so young. I mean, you all know this well, but as someone who comes here, 3 or 4 times a year, like, the youth is really what gets you, right? And the demographics of India and what the potential it presents is fantastic. And you're right, it's unlike any country in the world in terms of where the youth are going. And, like, even after talks like this, I talk to lots of people, but I end up talking to college students and high school students. Those are people that inspire me so much. The challenge is, can you create enough opportunities here for those millions of graduates every year? Can you build the infrastructure necessary around the whole stack, right, to build an AI ecosystem that works? These are big challenges. We're struggling with them in the United States and around the world. This is the biggest challenge for India. So the biggest challenge, in a way, is scalability. Yes. For 1 billion citizens, I'm talking about 1.5 billion population, but 1 billion citizens who possibly today could use AI tools. OpenAI, and indeed AI's challenge, is how do I scale up? And this is something I hope OpenAI can help with. Big dreams, big challenges go together. Okay. Ronnie Chatterjee, for joining us here, Dr. Chatterjee, and giving us what this dream could look like and what the challenges are and what the opportunities are. Please give him a very big hand. Thank you very much. Thank you. For joining me. Thank you. Thank you for having me.